Hello, this is Jay Sawant from Mumbai, India, and I'm making a video on the Russo Ukrainian war, specifically focusing on how Ukraine called upon itself this tragedy and what does Russia wants from Ukraine. And as you can see from my title, that how did Ukraine called upon itself this tragedy, I would like to first inform you all that to not to get a misunderstanding that I am completely blaming Ukraine for this war. But yes, some aspects of my video or in some parts of my video, you will realize that I am specifically blaming Ukraine for this war. But I would like all of you to see this video till the end so that you can get a clear idea of what I'm speaking. And I would request you to not to judge me or judge my content specifically on my title. So on 21st of February 2022, Russia officially recognized the two rebel regions in Ukraine in the Donbas region, the Donetsk and the Luhansk People's Republic, and then Russia marched its army into that region, providing military assistance to that regions. And on 24th of February, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So before around 2 months, Russia had almost placed 100,000 troops on Ukraine's borders, ready to invade, and there was been warnings given by the U.S. president and other Western allies regarding the invasion of Ukraine. So I would like to focus, and I would like first of all I would like to request since this is my very first video and I have written not as a thesis but some important points regarding on what I will be explaining in this video. And as I told you, this is my first video. I would like to take help from my points in between, and I would like to apologize for my inconsistency in the video. So there are many perspectives like media channels which are telling, some are holding Russia accountable for this, then some are blaming Ukraine. There are always two sides in a war, but let's focus what's Russia's reasons or maybe excuses for this war. First of all, Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, is explaining that he wants to denazify and demilitarize Ukraine. So I would like to tell all of you that this argument of denazification is not appealing the world in general, and how there are loopholes in this argument. First of all, regarding denazification, it has origins in a new Nazi militia. I think it is called as. Wait a second. Yeah, Azov Battalion, which is a new Nazi militia in Ukraine. So, neo-Nazi means people who believe in the Nazi ideology of Adolf Hitler and practice its beliefs. So, there is a militia named Azov Battalion in Ukraine, so which is anti-Russian, and they openly claim themselves as white supremacists. So this militia has been officially incorporated into Ukraine's National Guard, which is like an paramilitary force of civilians. So on the basis of that, Russian president is claiming that there has been Nazification of Ukraine's military and he wants to demilitarize it. But first thing I would like to know is yes, definitely Ukraine's government has incorporated an neo-Nazi supporting regime, neo-Nazi supporting militia into its military. But I would like to know that since the 2014 Russian invasion of Crimea, there has been a lot of anti-Russian sentiment, and maybe because of that, the government and people may have ignored about the militia's Nazi beliefs, and they are ready to just shake hands with anyone who is against Russia. So the further thing I would like to explain is Even though a unit has been incorporated in the Ukrainian military, that doesn't mean that the entire population of Ukraine or the government of Ukraine is a Nazi sympathizing regime. For example, the current president, Mr. Volodymyr Zelensky, he is a grandson of Simon Ivanovich Zelensky. So basically, Simon Ivanovich Zelensky was an Holocaust survivor whose entire family was murdered by the Nazis in the gas chambers in the concentration camps. So he survived the war, and during the war, when he was liberated, he decided to join Red Army to fight against Hitler. So Mr. Vladimir Zelensky belongs to a family which has a long origins of fighting Nazis. And as after the war started by Russia on 24th February 2022, President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed that how could a nation whose 8 million civilians were subjected to death by the Nazi regime would be neo-Nazis. So this is the argument which he has made it clearly that Vladimir Putin's accusation that this regime is illegitimate or the regime is a neo-Nazi regime, definitely it doesn't make any logic. And also an statement given by Mr. Vladimir Putin is like that this government is illegitimate. So there is nothing illegitimate in this government. This government is democratically elected in 2019, and President Volodymyr Zelensky has been elected with a landslide victory of almost 73%. So there is nothing illegitimate about uh, this current Ukrainian regime. And regarding the demilitarization of the Ukrainian military, which he aims to, as in precaution of being taken over by the neo-Nazis. But I would like to know, even if there has been a takeover by a certain sector of neo-Nazi sympathizers or neo-Nazi believers, currently how's the war is going for Ukraine, you can clearly understand that what kind of threat an Ukrainian military can what kind of threat an Ukrainian military can possess to the Russian sovereignty. So there is absolutely no logic that Ukraine's demilitarization is needed, as Ukraine is severely underarmed as compared to Russia. So I don't think there is any kind of logic in this kind of statements made by President Vladimir Putin. And further, we would like to go for the second component, that is how Ukraine called upon itself this war. So personally, this is one of my favorite part in this video. So I would like to know that the invasion which has occurred on Ukraine, the first invasion happened in 2014, which was basically an invasion of the Crimean Peninsula, which belonged to the Ukraine, and it was in protectorate of Ukrainian government. So, so this is basically the second invasion after almost 8 years. So I would like to highlight few points on how Ukraine itself called upon this invasion. But the thing most people are thinking that I'm blaming Ukraine, it is not basically because of some political or social reasons. It is basically because of the military blunders done by the Ukrainian government and historical lessons not learned from almost 1000 years of history. So one of the main reasons that this invasion occurred, specifically because of military blunders. So one of the topmost military blunders done by Ukraine was in the year 1994. So, as you know that before 1991, both Russia and Ukraine were a part of the USSR, which had the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons in the world. So, after its dissolution, what happened is there were 1,700 nuclear weapons placed in the Ukrainian territory. So, after Ukrainian Ukraine became independent, Ukraine had 1,700 nuclear weapons, which was the third largest in the entire world after Russia, America. So it had the third largest stock of nuclear weapons. And if you see 1,700 nuclear weapons are just too much. I mean, yeah, definitely very less as compared to Russia and America. But 1,700 is definitely far greater than England's, France, or China's, Pakistan's, or India's counts of 130, 160, 200, 300, 400, 500 nuclear weapons. So, yeah, I can understand 1,700 nuclear weapons were definitely a big one. So what happened in 1994? Ukraine signed an nuclear non-proliferation treaty, basically a treaty which has been created by the five permanent members of the Security Council of the United Nations. So as to stop the development of nuclear weapons in the entire world. So what they do is they make member countries sign an agreement in which these countries will not develop nuclear weapons. So Ukraine also signed this agreement, and let me tell you that Ukraine didn't create any nuclear weapons after its independence. It inherited the 1,700 nuclear weapons from the USSR, and it decided that it will denuclearize and basically destroy all these nuclear warheads. So one blunder which Ukraine did, it was destroying its nuclear warheads, which were like almost 1,700. And I can definitely understand that having so much amount of stockpile of nuclear weapons was going to hit Ukraine itself. It may have been sanctioned by the Americans and the Britishers, or maybe Russians as well. So I can definitely understand it would have put an economic setback on the newly independent socialist republic of Ukraine. But the thing is, out of 1,700, even if Ukraine would have put some weapons in its stockpile and destroyed much of them, like at least Ukraine could have kept at least 500 nuclear weapons as a deterrent. So basically, how does a deterrent works? So I would like to inform you that from the ongoing current Russian invasion of Ukraine, there has been some sentiments, not sentiments, there has been some narrative in India that why doesn't India take over the Pakistan occupied Kashmir like Russia is invading Ukraine? So I would like to note that India could have done it very easily, like taking over POK because of its conventional military superiority over Pakistan. But the fact that Pakistan has nuclear weapons and it will not hesitate to use nuclear weapons against India if it feels threatened. So after 1971, when India invaded, not it could be said an invasion, but maybe as a liberation war for Bangladesh, and East Pakistan was liberated by India. So definitely, so at that time there was a need for an atomic bomb in Pakistan which could act as a deterrent against India's conventional military superiority. So if any day if India decides to attack Pakistan, for example, during the 2001 parliamentary attack on India, India had considered to hit back Pakistan, but Pakistan had clearly decided with a nuclear strike if India strikes Pakistan militarily. So this is the effect which a deterrent can have. As you know, because of nuclear weapons or nuclear war, if a nuclear war happens between India and Pakistan, obviously the first losses will be millions of people dying due to the nuclear explosions, and the after effects of these nuclear explosions will be all the harmful radiation expelled by these weapons, which will cause genetic harm in the upcoming generations. It can also cause very serious impacts on the environment, not just like the impact caused by this fossil fuel burning. It will create a very lethal blow on the environment. For example, because of this, the ozone layer will completely get destroyed, and the temperature on Earth will increase as well, and there could be a possibility of nuclear winter, where all these gases and all the radiation from this nuclear weapons will cover the entire Earth, and sunlight won't be able to reach our planet, and it would cause an ice age. So Ice Age might look very interesting in movies, but in reality, Ice Age will lead to, I mean, almost all vegetation from Earth can get vanished because it requires sunlight. So this is all the harmful effects of nuclear war, and because of this, nobody wants to have a nuclear war. Although Pakistan is always trying to threaten India with nuclear weapons, even though it knows that in response it might get nuked as well by India's superior nuclear weapons. So basically, I want to say that this is the effect of nuclear weapons as a deterrent. Another example, two or three examples I would like to give you of nuclear deterrence. Or at we have heard that North Korea has been threatening the United States with nuclear strike. So basically, what I want to tell is, before this, North Korea having nuclear weapons, there was always been a threat from America regarding a nuclear strike on North Korea if it decides to invade South Korea, or if it decides to have a war. So after North Korea made nuclear weapons, so it started threatening the United States. Although it was not going to launch any kind of nukes in reality, but as you know, because of North Korea having nuclear weapons, America had to come for a discussion where President Donald Trump uh, held a peace talks with North Korea. That doesn't mean that America was basically afraid of North Korean weapons. America has a very large stockpile of nuclear weapons that can destroy North Korea probably 100 times. But as you know that the kind of destruction nuclear weapons have, even if one or two are fired, it can cause mutual destruction. That's why they are called as weapons of mutual destruction or weapons of mass destruction. So this is basically an effect having nuclear weapons have. So this is the way nuclear weapons act as a deterrent. And regarding Ukraine giving up its nuclear weapons, the reasons were, yeah, definitely there were economic reasons, but Ukraine was under the impression that even if Ukraine gives up its nuclear weapons, in case of an external aggression, the United States and the Western powers will come and help out Ukraine, as it was mentioned in the Budapest Memorandum, which was signed by all the security members of the United Nations. So it was mentioned that Ukraine won't be left alone in the case of external aggression. But definitely, they didn't mean that we will not keep Ukraine alone. That doesn't mean that the United States or the Western powers will go a war with the aggressor. Specifically, here we are mentioning Russia. So, because the thing is, if they could have went to war with Russia, if it was possible, as both were armed with nuclear weapons and thousands of nuclear weapons, it could have happened way much longer before. So the thing is that United States and all the NATO countries will have a war which can escalate to a nuclear war with Russia in defense of Ukraine was never going to happen. But maybe Ukraine couldn't perceive this. And the second thing, I'm a bit surprised and have noticed that how could Ukraine couldn't feel a threat to its sovereignty from Russia, as Ukraine was subjected to Russian rule from almost for a century period, not just from Russian rule, but some Polish, Lithuanian rule as well. So Ukraine was subjected to foreign rule for a lot of times, and for a considerable time of this millennium, of this for some centuries, Russia had ruled over Ukraine. So there is question in me that how could Ukraine or Ukrainian people could not perceive Russia as a threat. Yes, definitely Ukrainian people and Russian people are, they have their they are very similar in origin. But if, since there is a distinction between Ukraine and Russia, uh, Russia has always treated Ukraine as a colony. It has never treated like the Vladimir Putin's claims that Ukrainian and Russians are like one people only. Russia always had ruled Ukraine for a lot amount of time, and the one narrative which Putin holds that Ukraine was created by Lenin, or Ukraine was a problem created by Lenin. So I think this doesn't hold any kind of rationality. As in the 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution had definitely had started in Russia, but it did spread to the other Soviet republics, which we know as Soviet republics. So it had spread to other countries as well, and which eventually formed the USSR. So originally the revolution started in Russia, and after that Ukraine was captured by the Russian Bolsheviks and with the help of the Ukraine communists. So Ukraine was invaded and subjected to Russian dominance for a long period of time. So I'm a bit surprised that Ukraine couldn't perceive Russia as a threat, and it gave up its nuclear weapons. So I would like to put a point that even though nuclear weapons have such a tremendous amount of what we say mass destruction, I mean they can literally tear apart our planet. So should we give up nuclear weapons? Is giving up nuclear weapons a solution? But I would like to inform you all that war has been always been an integral part of human society. War is not something which was completely avoided. Even though we were saying that there would be no war in 21st century, we are seeing a war right now. So war has been always been an integral part of mankind. And the thing is, I think nuclear weapons, rather than increasing a chance of having a war, having nuclear weapons have, I think, only decrease the chances of having a war, because the leaders of these superpower nations who hold these nuclear weapons, they know that what could happen if these nuclear weapons are used. So this is the reason they always try to not get into war right now, specifically after the invention of nuclear weapons. So as you can see that having nuclear weapons is a kind of insurance against some kind of invasion. Although I don't support this narrative that every country should make nuclear weapons, because it would definitely make this world a bit unsafer, and some rogue nations would not mind using these kind of nuclear weapons against anyone, no matter whatever may the after effects or whatever, like the effects on environment, etc. So I don't support this like the idea of like everybody having nuclear weapons, but specifically if you have a neighbor which has been in history of conquering you, and it is armed to teeth with thousands of nuclear weapons. So in the wake of that situation, giving up your nuclear weapons was definitely a blunder. And another blunder. There may be some more blunders, or maybe I have misinformed regarding some of the blunders. But some of the blunders I have noticed in the Ukrainian military history, specifically from 1991, I would like to mention them. So the Soviet Union had developed a next generation fighter aircraft named the Sukhoi 27. So it was a very capable aircraft. It held 27 records. It is considered to be one of the most maneuverable aircraft and pinnacle of Soviet aircraft industry. So after 1991, after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Ukraine inherited around 60 to 70 Sukhoi 27 aircraft. But since 1991, there has been no newer version or new Sukhoi 27 added to Ukrainian Air Force. In fact, the number of operational Sukhoi 27 has been always been decreasing from 1991. Like for example, during the 2014 Russian invasion of Crimea, where at a time Ukraine was having around 60 to 70 Sukhoi 27 fighter aircrafts. In 2014, during the Russian invasion of Crimea, it had only 19. So you can understand how much loss it had been to the Ukrainian Air Force. And there were some issues like lack of funding, etc. And maybe Ukraine was plagued with corruption, so it might not have been able to fund its fighter force. But the thing is, it placed in a very vulnerable situation, mostly in a dead rubber situation against the modern Russian Air Force. And also, I would like to inform that between 2007 and 2017, around 65 combat aircraft were sold by Ukraine to other powers, out of which 9 were Sukhoi 27. And another aspect I would like to mention here is that although there have been many blunders committed by the Ukrainian government regarding its military, Ukraine always had a great military industry. For example, during the dissolution of Soviet Union in 1991, Ukraine had almost 1,840 defense-related enterprises employing around 3 million scientists, engineers, and skilled technicians. So Ukraine till days also enjoys one of the most developed independent arms industry. But yes, it does have a lots of independent arms industries and various companies related to defense, and much of these customers are from Russian origin as well. So the thing is, we can see, although we observe that even though Ukraine has an industrial capacity for manufacturing weapons, most of these weapons were sold abroad, but not for Ukraine's safety. For example, around 2000 or around 2000 in 2012, Ukraine was the fourth largest exporter of arms and ammunition. Although this number fell gradually from 8 to 9 to 12 around 2020, but this shows that Ukraine did had the capacity of manufacturing weapons, and it could not have been in the state it is today that if it had focused more positively on its military. So we can see that Ukraine did had enough ammunition to sell it, but unfortunately Ukraine couldn't arm itself up to the level that it could back off any kind of Russian invasion. Another blunder I would like to mention, although it is hard to say that it is a blunder because this weapon is very expensive. So again, after the dissolution of Soviet Union, Ukraine had a Soviet aircraft carrier named Varyak. So although it was only 68% completed, but it was still a 60,000 ton aircraft carrier. With the help of that aircraft carrier, definitely if Ukrainian economy was booming and stable, it could have operated an aircraft carrier. But as we can see from its military blunders, I don't think it could have operated this aircraft carrier. But having such a big aircraft carrier in Black Sea would have been a show of power of Ukrainian military and a direct challenge to Russia, and maybe this could have an impact on the Russian thinking regarding Ukraine. They could have taken Ukraine in a more serious manner rather than a country that could be invaded anyhow. Ukraine just not just made a blunder regarding not recognizing the carrier's capabilities, but it also made a blunder while selling the carrier. So Ukraine sold this aircraft carrier to a Macau-based business for 25 million. So if you see that $25 million is too much, then I would like to inform that when India purchased is the aircraft carrier from Russia, which was basically a similar ship like the Varyak, which Ukraine sold to that Macau-based businessman. Although it was 15,000 tons smaller than that Ukrainian vessel, it was sold to India at around $1.3 billion. So you can in 2003. So you can understand that there is a big difference between $25 million and $1.3 billion. If you want to know the difference, you can just go and check how many million does and 1 billion make. So you can definitely make out that this has been a major blunder committed by the Ukrainian government, and it has been also highlighted as in strategic, not in strategic, but maybe a financial victory for China, and also maybe a financial defeat or like blunder made by Ukraine, because this carrier which this Macau-based businessman bought it for 25 million, it was later acquired by Chinese Navy, and basically it got an aircraft carrier worth billions for the cost of just 25 million. And although the next blunder, I don't think it's a blunder, but the next point I'm going to mention, I think I do not have a very professional approach regarding it, but Ukraine's active military, which is 200,000, 2 lakhs or 200,000 strong, I think it is quite less as compared to other nations who have a similar population to military age ratio. For example, Ukraine has 1.5 million, that is 15 lakh people fit for military service. So out of which only 2 lakh are serving in the active military. Whereas if you compare to South Korea, which has a bit similar population like Ukraine has 45 million, South Korea has 15 million. So still South Korea has 550 soldiers, and not just about the numbers of soldiers, South Korea is one of the most technologically advanced equipped militaries in the world. So you can clearly see that Ukraine hasn't focused on its defense, and or maybe it couldn't perceive Russia as a threat, and when did it perceive Russia as a threat, it was too late, because whatever Ukrainian independence move or Ukrainian nationalism which is rising right now against Russia, the whole country is uniting against Russia. But the thing is, although it looks good that although so many people are taking arms against the invading Russian forces, but who are these people? These people are like just you and me and all. Imagine being a situation where civilians, not just of young age but of every age, are forced to take arms against an invading army. So I'm not defaming the fighting spirit of Ukrainian people, but it's not a good situation for a military power that the sovereignty of the country now depends on the civilians taking arms as well. So we have never faced such kind of situation, nor we will ever face, because this is what the Indian Armed Forces do. So moving on, I would like to go to the next topic, that what does Russia wants from this invasion, or what does Putin wants from this invasion, and how, in spite of all the harsh measures taken against Russia, how did Putin make a go through it. So some of the reasons I have read, as you know, Ukraine has the second largest gas reserves in Europe and largest in Russia. So maybe Russia wants to have access to all these gas reserves and get more richer by appointing a puppet government in Ukraine, which is most likely it is going to appoint a puppet government which will be pro-Russian, and it will be replacing this current Zelensky government. So another thing, people are holding some kind of narrative that Putin wants to remake the Soviet Union, and this is he doing, and this is his first step of remaking the Soviet Union. So I think this narrative doesn't hold any kind of practical reality, because along with Russia and Ukraine, there are 13 other countries as well. So are you saying that Putin is going to conquer the 13 other countries as well? Well, and some of its members are part of NATO alliance as well. So it definitely doesn't make any point that Putin is doing this to recreate the Soviet Union. And anyways, the Soviet Union, although how powerful and how large or however diverse it was still a communist state which prohibited any kind of private ownership or like companies, whereas Russia, as you know, has the most number of billionaires. So you can, and the wealth inequality in Russia is the biggest in the world between rich and poor. In the top rich and top poor, second comes India. So recreating the Soviet Union is like a complete philosophical opposite. And another thing, and the next thing we are coming into is like regarding sanctions. Tough sanctions are imposed on Russia following this Russian invasion of Ukraine. So what are sanctions? So sanctions are basically economic restrictions put against a specific country mostly for the violation of international law, or maybe threatening world peace, or even maybe if you have some problems with the West. For example, if you're not purchasing if you're purchasing Russian weapons and not purchasing American weapons, uh, in spite if you have close relations with America. For example, India had purchased S-400 air defense missile system from Russia, and nowadays we know that India does enjoy good relations with the United States. So the United States was almost going to put sanctions on India for buying Russian weapons. Although this didn't happen because of our strong Indian diplomacy. So this is the extent the sanctions can be put on a specific country. But sanctions had been put on Russia in 2014 as well, when it invaded the Crimean Peninsula. It was removed from the G8 group, basically a group of the top world powers of European and North American powers, and later it came to be known as G7 because Russia was removed from. So the thing is, in 2014, also a lot of sanctions were imposed on Russia, and after that, and another thing is sanctions won't really work in long term. For example, you have to lift the sanctions at some point of time, because whenever you are putting sanctions on someone, it is not that the country on which the sanctions are put, only that country will be get affected. It's also the countries which put sanctions on other countries, they are also get affected. For example, Germany has cancelled that Nord Stream supply of gas from Russia, and all this American and Russian countries have imposed sanctions on Russia. So this has caused a very high spike rise of the gas prices all over the world. So it's not that sanctions are foolproof. They do affect you. They do affect the country which puts sanctions on the other country as well. So further moving on, when the sanctions were put on Russia in 2014. So after that, there has been some claims that actually Russia has become more self-reliant even after putting sanctions on it. And its external debt is very low, like around, I don't know exactly or what exact figure it is right now, but it is considered to be very low external debt compared to America, which is very big. So I think Putin is very much prepared for this sanction attack. I mean, he's definitely a very smart person, and he is not like who is unprepared for these sanctions. he was definitely aware that he is going to face with very tough sanctions for doing this war or carry outing this invasion. So I think Putin is definitely prepared for all this. Although the sanctions now are very tough, like almost it is going to cause a damage of $1 trillion to Russia, and Russia has been banned from the payment system, which is basically a payment system conducted to transfer a large amount of currencies between different governments and companies. So SWIFT has decided to remove Russia from it. Although it's a definite moment that it can't be removed forever. It will be incorporated in some time or later. So this definitely makes us clear that Putin is definitely prepared for these sanctions. And some people are questioning that even after some such hard sanctions put against Russia, how does he has so much confidence regarding this invasion, or what kind of guarantees he have against this sanctions? So, so many people are saying that China has his hands over Russia's shoulders. So maybe China will be supporting it financially, and maybe in return Russia will support China diplomatically or militarily, because now the message has been gone that Russia has invaded Ukraine, and the West would not achieve a significant deterrence to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Although the West has been providing Ukraine with weapons, but that doesn't seem to be enough, because even after so much weapons provided at the very last moment, it can't match the Russian air superiority or the Russian weapons they I mean, use. त्यांना घेऊ नको. हाँ. So sorry, there was been some personal interruption, but so I would like to continue is, yeah, that maybe the message has gone that the West could not achieve any kind of significance over the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So there has been a message that a clear message that China may take over Taiwan, and maybe the West would not do anything again as well. So in that moment, maybe Russia would support China in return of China's accused financial support to Russia during this sanction period. So maybe China could go ahead and take over some islands in South China Sea, and maybe our worst nightmare that China could sneak its eyes on Arunachal or Galwan. But I think the Indian Armed Forces and the current Indian government will definitely follow such attempts. And moving on, I would like to give an advice to Vladimir Putin. Maybe I'm too small to give an advice to Vladimir Putin. He may be having some kind of ambitions of taking over Ukraine, as he says that Russians and Ukrainians are one people. Like he wants to recreate the Soviet Union. But I would like to give him example of the European Union. So the European Union was formed in the early 1990s by where the European countries have or decided that they'll have a common goal of economic and social progresses, and also the European Union, in case of an external aggression, there will be a defensive alliance. But after you can see, because after this European Union, although the Britain has left it, but if you see the majority of the effects of this European Union are positive. Like there has been free trade, like citizens of these nations can walk over or visit any of these countries without any kind of restrictions, and there has been ease of doing business, and there is a the unity which was never before till around almost till date among European powers who fought two world wars and that which caused so much of destruction. such kind of unity was never observed between European powers. So even after even remaining distinct from each other, they are now united and now are progressing for a better life, providing better living conditions for its citizens. So I would like to suggest Vladimir Putin that maybe he could have tried such kind of measures in establishing the maybe so-called Soviet Union rather than dominating and bench pressing smaller nations. He could have opened the idea of peacefulness, acceptance, which will eventually lead to the more economic uh, progress of these nations because of the ease of doing business and the peaceful environment provided by these nations. So maybe from me, this is a suggestion that this model of European Union could have been applied. And another thing I would like to highlight as an Indian is a very proud moment for us actually. Although this war does do have some domino effects on us, but if you see that since the Ukrainian invasion, Ukraine, a country which has never supported India politically or in any matters or has been arming Pakistan very heavily in spite of India's obstruction to it. So a few days ago, I think 2 or 3 days ago, Ukraine's ambassador was pleading for help from India, saying that Modi ji's stature is like maybe he's the only leader will put and listen to, and Prime Minister Modi has spoken to the both the Ukrainian president and the Russian president as well. He has spoken to Vladimir Putin for the immediate cessation of all the violent activities and the war. And the Russian chief of defense staff, or I don't know, he is chief of defense staff or maybe general of the army. He has specifically informed his soldiers that if you see that there is an Indian flag lying on a car or waving at a house, he has asked the soldiers to ensure a safe escape or a safe environment for the Indian students. And if compared to the Americans, America had given a long warning to its citizens in Ukraine that it will not use its troops to evacuate the Ukrainians in case of war. But if you see that from the effort from the Indian government has been great, and a majority of the students are now being rescued from Ukraine and brought back to India. So it is a very proud moment for us. And hereby I conclude my video. This was my very first video, and I'm definitely noticing that there have been very verbal errors, some grammatical mistakes, and inconsistency between my speech. But I would like to keep improving on all this, and I will be making videos on many other such current issues or some historical topics. So if you like this video, I would request you to like this, share this video to your friends, and in the comment section I would like to have some inputs if I have some kind of misinformation posted, and I would entertain constructive criticisms. So, and for further updates, I would like you to click on that bell button so you will get updates from me if I post another video. So see you soon on the next video.